Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with two young scientists of San Diego. We have Alex Brigg here on my left, and I'll be interviewing William Morrison in a few minutes. And these guys were chosen out of thousands of young scientists in San Diego County for their excellence in research. So I want to thank you, Alex, for joining me today for this special interview. I want to ask you first, I've heard you've been learning about chordates and the evolution of invertebrates. Can you tell me what you know specifically about invertebrates?
Yes. Invertebrates are organisms that have no backbone, such as snails or worms.
Interesting. Now, what do you know about their origins?
Ediacaran fossils brought about the discovery of a group of ancient invertebrates that paleontologists have puzzled over for years. These fossils seem different from the modern-day invertebrates. They included some of the earliest and most primitive animals known. Most were flat, plate-shaped, and lived on the bottom of shallow seas, and were made of soft tissues that absorbed the nutrients from the water around it. They were segmented and had a bilateral symmetry, but showed little of a front or a back end. They may have been related to jellyfish or worms.
That's very interesting. You guys, I can tell you guys have done a lot of research on this topic. My next question is, when did these invertebrates actually come around?
They came around in the Cambrian period, which began about 544 million years ago, and is marked by an abundance of different fossils. By this time, animals had evolved shells and skeletons and other hard body parts, which were preserved in fossils.
Well, my next question is, what do you know about these organs and tissues of the invertebrates?
Organisms such as sponges and cnidarians have little internal specialization and carry out essential functions with individual cells or simple tissue. More complex vertebrates have cells that are joined together to form tissues and organ systems that carry out complex functions.
Do the invertebrates have a body symmetry?
All invertebrates except sponges have a bilateral or a radial radial symmetry.
Now, what do you know about the way they move?
All invertebrates with a bilateral symmetry rely on movement for feeding, defense, and other important functions. Cephalization helps invertebrates respond to the environment in a more sophisticated way. The arranged nerve cells in a simpler invertebrate are called ganglia. In a more complex invertebrate, it is a brain.
Yeah, I know you were talking about segmentation earlier in our interview. Is it found in all invertebrates, and what exactly does it do?
Segmentation is found in almost all invertebrates that have a bilateral symmetry, and it allows the invertebrate to grow in size with some genetic changes.
Now, do you know anything about the column formation? I'm sorry, column. I think it's column. Is that correct? I'm not the expert here.
It's the column.
Column, okay.
Cnidarians have no column, but other invertebrates do. Most animals, phyla, have a true column, which is lined completely with tissue diverted from mesoderm.
Interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about the embryological development of invertebrates?
In most invertebrates, the zygote divides repeatedly to form a blastula. In protostomes, the blastopore develops into a mouth. In deuterostomes, the blastopore develops into an anus. Worms, arthropods, and mollusks are protostomes, and echinoderms are uterostomes.
Well, Alex, I want to thank you for taking the time to come here and let us other scientists or people know about these interesting topics that you're learning. Our next interviewing session is going to take place with William Morrison, so I want to thank you again, sir. And it's been a pleasure interviewing you. All right, we're now going to take part in our second interview with William Morrison, and he's going to tell us and answer some questions about chordates. So William, my first question is, what are chordates?
Well, chordates are animals that have 4 specific characteristics, and they have to have them at least at some point in their lives. One is that they have a dorsal fin. The other is that they have a notochord cord, which is a long cord that runs down the back of a chordate that's just slightly located under the nerve cord. They also must have pharyngeal pouches, which are they're paired two structures of bags located in the throat type areas of the chordates. And in some chordates, like fishes, they can develop into gills that are used for gas exchange. And the last thing it must have is a tail, which extends past the anus, and it must contain bone and muscles used to swim, because these are mostly aquatic species.
Thank you, William. My next question is, are these chordates, are they considered vertebrates or invertebrates?
Well, chordates are mostly vertebrates, and although they're mostly vertebrates, they have a strong supporting structure known as the vertebral column or backbone. And in this case, the backbone replaces a notochord cord in developing vertebrates. And the backbone is made of vertebrae, which are individual segments that make up the notochord cord itself and the vertebrate. And the vertebrae not only are the individual segments that make it, but they also help support and enclose and protect the spinal cord.
Okay. I'm sorry, go for it.
But while there are, not all are vertebrates. There are some that are non-vertebrates, and I think the next question might have that.
Okay, well, very interesting, and I'm learning a lot here. My last question, are there different types of chordates?
Yes, there are. There's mostly two main types that are most known, but as for most of them that are vertebrates, you probably know about them. But there are two specific kinds that are non-vertebrates, and they're known as tunicates and lancelets. And both are soft-bodied marine organisms that have 4 chordate characteristics. And tunicates are filter feeders, and when born, they have all 4 chordate characteristics, and when they develop, they lose the tail and attach to a solid surface, such as a rock or coral. And the other type is lancelets, that are small fish-like creatures that live on sandy ocean bottoms. And there's a picture here that shows an example of, this is an example of a tunicate, a small larva tunicate. And as you can see, it has all the hollow nerve cord and all the processes it has. And then here's an example of an adult one that has a totally different shape because it's already attached to a surface. And here's an example of a lancelet, and as you can see, it has the pharynx with gill slits, which are also known as, which have the pharyngeal pouches. And there's also a hollow nerve cord that goes down, and as you can see, the notochord cord is right under it. And it also has the segmented muscles on the bottom, the anus, the intestine, and the tail. And that mostly wraps it up.
Okay, thanks, William. I want to appreciate you taking the time here to answer my questions. And once again, I want to thank the 2 scientists, Alex Sprigg and William Morrison from Cathedral Catholic High School.